Therapists say sometimes you just get your wires crossed, and that's true of therapy as well. Mended light. So we asked you for some terrible things that therapists have said to you, or things that were hurtful or not helpful, and I am responding to some of those things. But first, a helpful comment. One of you wrote, sometimes when I hear things like that, speaking of one of our other therapists say videos, sometimes when I hear things like that, I wonder if the therapist actually meant something else by it. I've had therapists ask crappy sounding questions because what they're trying to do is get me to explore my feelings. Yes, in fact, I always think it's good to give people the benefit of the doubt because sometimes things just come out wrong. And that's important. We haven't really addressed this too much in this video series. Some of these therapists are probably pretty dang good therapists, but they misspoke. They chose their words poorly, or sometimes, we don't always remember things exactly as they played out. And if I have a lens that I have, an emotional lens, a psychological lens through which things get filtered, I may remember a conversation differently. Meaning, I may remember my therapist having said something that's not actually what they said. But I'm going to give our viewers the benefit of the doubt as well, that what you report is actually what was said. I think it's important to follow up with people and say, hey, this is what I'm understanding from what you said. Is this what you were going for? And give them the opportunity to clarify. Oh, yeah, if that's how that came out, I apologize. That's hurtful. That's terrible. That's not what I meant. I've definitely had days where I'm sleep deprived or I'm on my 7th client of the day. It's been a long day and the brain's not as sharp as it could be. Or where I'm just thinking 2 steps ahead, or any number of things could happen. So I do think it's good to give the benefit of the doubt. When I started with my therapist, I was worried she was dismissing me because she didn't want to talk about my ADHD. She seemed to keep asking about other things. The second appointment, she asked more about my childhood. It was on the third appointment she started asking about my ADHD, and I realized she wanted to get to know me all around and not only one thing. I had been rejected and dismissed for 40 years and made the assumption that she was doing it too. And this is kind of what I was talking about. All of us see the world through the lenses that we have, right? And it colors everything. And so if I'm used to getting dismissed, rejected, people don't believe me, people don't want to talk about what I want to talk about, people minimize my needs, I'm going to be primed to experience another encounter through that lens as this is what's happening. But this therapist, very wisely, though I think could have done a better job of saying it explicitly, wanted to get to know the person in front of them as a complete person, not just as a diagnosis. And I do a very similar thing. So the only suggestion I would make for this therapist is explicitly tell the person that's what you're doing so they know. And so I often tell people in my office, I know you have what you're here to deal with. I know you have what you're struggling with that you want my help with. But I don't want to see you as just the diagnosis or the trauma or the problem or the worst choices, like if people have cheated on their spouse, for example. I want to see you as more than just your worst moments. And I think that's wise. I think that's a great part of what we call in my field joining. Joining is building a rapport and connecting with people. But yeah, just be explicit about it. The comment continues, I am so glad I've stayed with her because she lets me be me, and my husband has noticed such a change. Sometimes past pain can cloud our vision of the person helping us. Not always, but sometimes. I was so ready to dismiss my therapist, but I'm glad I didn't. She is a godsend. I think this is true of people outside of therapists as well. I've heard it said, never attribute to malice what you can attribute to stupidity. I'm going to soften that a bit. Never attribute to malice what you can attribute to ignorance. This therapist clearly didn't register. I need to tell my client, hey, I want to talk about your ADHD and we're going to work on that, but I want to spend a couple of sessions getting to know you as a person. So that's all about managing expectations. But this comment, sometimes past pain can cloud our vision of the person helping us. I think past pain can cloud our vision of a lot of people. But sometimes we perceive threats because they are there. And so it's important to keep your eyes open and your mind and ask questions and communicate. But great point. Thank you for sharing that. Something that my therapist said to me was along the lines of, I feel like you aren't taking this very seriously. So maybe you should take a break from therapy until you learn how to open up, so you're not wasting your money or my time. I thought she was supposed to ask me questions and figure out why I needed therapy because I didn't know anything about how therapy worked. Yeah, this comes down to, ironically, poor communication on on both parts, but one expects more from the therapist because we're supposedly the experts at that and people are coming to us for help learning how to do that. Because I've definitely felt before that people weren't taking therapy seriously. I've had the feeling of, oh, this is a waste of my time and this is a waste of their money. But that's not a reason to dismiss somebody. In fact, how I do it is I check with, okay, I want to make sure you're getting what you need here, and you're here. Clearly you want to be here, you're paying to be here, but it feels like we're not getting a lot of traction. Is there something that I could do differently to help us get the ball rolling more? And then I listen for their answer, and sometimes I'm very surprised. I'm like, oh, I hadn't considered that, but that would be helpful if I did that. And then I'm in a better position to say, and what can you do to get the ball rolling more for yourself? What can you do to get the most out of this process, do you think? And what are the hangups? And to have a productive conversation like that, because I certainly don't want to be wasting anyone's time or money, but at the same time, people are the best judges of what they need. I've had, for example, people who just need to talk. The stereotype about therapists is that we sit there, we listen, we say that sounds really hard, and then we take your money. That's actually not true. There's a lot of mental and emotional work that goes into being a therapist, and it's physically draining. But I have had clients who just want to talk, and they just want to be heard, and they need someone to listen because nobody does in their life, and they actually do a really good job of sorting things out on their own as long as they can talk. And with those people, I say, hey, it really feels like to me that most of what I'm doing is listening. I just want to make sure you're getting what you need. Do you need me to be a more active participant in this? And they say, no, it's fine. What we're doing is really helping. And then I very often put those people at the end of my week. I put them at the end of my week when my brain is tired and it's hard for me to think clearly, because I'm like, I can be present for this person and I can listen and I can empathize. And they've said that's all they needed, so they're going at the end of my week because that's the best place for them. I was undiagnosed ADHD at the time, and I'm an extreme people pleaser, so I just agreed and left. But the rejection sensitivity dysphoria made it so I have not been back to any therapist in nearly 10 years. I don't want to bother anyone else, and now I don't want to burden anyone either. I'm going to sympathize with what you're going through, and then I'm going to gently push back to open some things up here. The fact is, this therapist made a mistake and wasn't especially sensitive or communicative with you. And as a result, you felt rejected. And like you said, you're a people pleaser, so you just up and left. But you're saying, I haven't been to therapy in 10 years. I'm reading between the lines. It sounds like and feels like you want to or you need to, but you don't want to be a burden, is what you said, and you don't want to bother anybody. You won't bother a therapist by existing and coming with your problems. This is what we do. At least a good therapist, you definitely won't be a burden. This is why we're here. This is why we chose this profession. What happened in this case was your therapist was expecting you to show up a certain way in therapy, but didn't communicate that expectation with you. And as you said, you didn't know what you were doing. You didn't know how therapy was supposed to go. You were waiting for them to guide you through it, and they didn't. But you're not a burden. And they needed to communicate with you what they expected so that you could communicate back and figure out what actually needed to happen. Please try again. If you're suffering, if you're struggling, please try again and don't let this experience put you off. You need the support, is what it sounds like. And speaking as a therapist, we're here to do that and we want to do that. And I'm sorry you had this experience. So question for those watching, have you had any similar experiences that you want to share? Or what advice would you give? Let us know in the comments below. Or what poor advice have you received from a therapist that I can comment on? Again, sound off in the comments below. Now, I want to direct you all to another video I did called Why Traditional Therapy is Failing. Traditional therapy, the way it's been done for decades, helps a lot of people. But as the world evolves, therapy needs to evolve. And this video explores what the new frontier looks like. Check it out here somewhere. And until next time, keep shining. We need your light.